Good Sunday evening, fight fans. Welcome to Enter the Ring Live for a Sunday, December the 13th, 2020. I am Mighty Mike. I'm with my brother,
AJ Rage.
and we're not sure if our other brother Eric's going to join us, but he's got the invite, so he may or may jump in at any time now. Anyways, hey bro, let's just start it off. How's your weekend so far?
It's going pretty good, bro. How's yours?
Good. It was cold this weekend finally in California. I mean, for California, cold. It cooled down. Sun came out a little bit today, but it was cold yesterday.
My weekend's going pretty good, bro. Once again, we're on this ridiculous lockdown. We'll talk about that on another thing, but it was some exciting fights this week. I think I'm going to let you go ahead and take the lead on it. I know that you're real excited about a couple of them in particular, because I think there was some messages that were going to be said after this weekend. So why don't you go ahead and jump right into it, bro?
Yeah, we'll just jump right into it because we had a loaded weekend of fights, man. We had fights. We had obviously 3 networks had fights this weekend. The first one we're going to talk about is Saturday afternoon. From Wembley Arena, the main event, Anthony Joshua versus Kubrat Pulev. I guess it was a title shot. I mean, Anthony holds what, two of the 4 belts or 3 of the belts. So yes. Kubrat Pulev, he was a mandatory. AJ fulfilled the mandatory. 9th round. They're calling it a 9th round KO, although the referee kind of just waved it off when Pulev went down in the 9th round for the second time in that round or something. He just kind of waved it off. So do you call that? To me, that's more of a TKO. If the guy gets counted out, that's a KO. But he just once that right hand landed, he just waved it off. But either way, what did you think about the fight? I mean, I don't know.
I was a little mixed. I had some mixed reactions, and I'll tell you just to kind of get right into it. For one, first right off the bat, congratulations to Anthony Joshua for being victorious and coming back and just putting a little bit more excitement into the heavyweight division. That's not already an exciting division. It's reminding me almost of the heydays of the 80s, back when it was the Tysons and the Trevor Burbicks and the Pinklin Thomas. You kind of had this floating title, but these were all quality fighters.
Yeah.
One of the things that I noticed from AJ, there was a lot of talk coming in, and AJ, there's nothing wrong with talk. His talk is never disrespectful. It's just more on the confidence level.
Yeah.
Because I've come to the notion that regardless of how intimidating, Anthony Joshua looks, there's a lot of questions to still be answered within himself. And I think one of the things is he shows this insecurity in the ring. It's almost like he starts to doubt himself before the fans, the commentators, or even his own trainers start to doubt him. And that happens with if he's not successful, if the opponent lands punches that maybe they shouldn't land, or maybe he's feeling these punches a little bit more than he should. So he starts to question himself. And I saw that right away. The only good thing I could say that Rob McCracken did in this fight was keep Joshua composed. But as far as giving him directions, as far as, a
strategy,
game plan, once again, the guy's absolutely clueless. And I'm going to be honest with you. This is going to be Anthony Joshua's problem stepping forward. But before we get into that, the fight overall, don't get me wrong. I mean, Pulev, he's a tough guy. He comes to fight, but Joshua's
limited. Yeah. He's very limited.
Yeah. Very, very limited. I mean, you're talking about a 39-year-old guy. So it wasn't like, when you hear Eddie Hearn and he's talking like Anthony Joshua just, beat the second coming of Mike Tyson. No, dude, he just beat a 39-year-old guy who hasn't really done much in a long time. Do you agree?
No, I agree. I mean, in recent memory, his biggest win was a close points win over Hughie Fury. Am I correct?
Yes. That was even honestly, Fury had his moments. Fury actually dropped him, I think, in that fight.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think during the broadcast, they kept pointing to the fact how tough Pulev was and how Klitschko kept knocking him down and he kept getting up and stuff. And to me that's not something you want to focus on. He had his game plan was to, for the first 2 rounds, it was a lot of posturing, a lot of feinting going on. Neither guys really let their hands go. Anthony started letting his hands go a little bit, but Pulev, it's like if he thought he was going to outbox a guy that had him in both height and reach now, and that's another thing that was in question. They were saying that Anthony's only had a 2-inch height advantage over Pulev. He looked a lot taller than Pulev. He looked about 4 inches taller than Pulev. So I don't know.
Well, I think they see Pulev is what, 6'2"? There's no way that guy's 6'2".
No, they said he was 6'4", and they had Anthony at 6'6". Pulev probably is 6'2". He's not 6'4".
No,
I mean, if he's 6'4", it's with big giant tennis shoes on. But
yeah.
But I think we talked after the fight, and I think me and you both came to the same comparison when we saw Pulev fighting. Who did we say he reminded us of?
Oh, Andrew Galata.
Andrew Galata. It's like he fights in a manner that's, he borderline dirty, with the punching behind the head and whatnot. And then just his attitude during the fight, the pre-fight, during the fight, the jawing back and forth. And then even after the fight, it looked like they were having words in the corner after Pulev had already been dropped 4 times and stopped in the 9th round. He was still kind of, and I just think to myself, there's something mentally not right about the guy. He's off a little bit. He's just really off. Doesn't have the intelligence really to understand what's in front of him and what he needed to do. And I don't know who his trainer was. I did not recognize the guy that was his trainer, but I don't know what they were telling him in the corner. But whatever he was trying really wasn't working. Finally, at about the 7th, 8th round, he landed a couple, decent, right hands. And throughout the entire fight, I'm thinking to myself, man, AJ's holding his hands high, man. You need to go to the body, start stabbing him to the body with the jab or a right hand or a right hook to the body just to kind of bring AJ down. But overall, he had the wrong strategy going into that fight. And we predicted it. I'm actually shocked that actually went 9 rounds. I thought he would be out of there a lot sooner than that.
You're absolutely right, bro. And one of the things you touched on a great point with Pulev. He showed that thing about him that made Galata such a difficult fighter to deal with. It's almost like you can't negotiate with the guy. And when you're trying to, how do you give this guy instruction? It's almost like he's not listening to you, and he's very combative. And I think he lost some brownie points at the end. I think he even made some comments to AJ after the fight and stuff like this. It's like, take your loss, lick your wounds, and walk away. Because I guarantee you, a guy with Anthony Joshua's pull right now, Pulev isn't going to get a lot of more opportunities after this. He'll probably end up back at the hangar and maybe kiss somebody else over there. Who knows?
Well, yeah. Where did you go from here? That was his final shot at a world title. There's no way Kubrat Pulev gets another shot at the highest level in boxing. It's back to the drawing board. And how honest, realistically, he's 39 years old. He's probably closer to 40 years old. What's he going to do? You know what I mean?
I think it's time to call it a day at this point. Honestly,
I do as well. He probably got paid well. DAZN pays pretty well, and it was.
I'm sure he's made good money in his career. He's fought guys like Klitschko and others and stuff. I think he even fought what was his name? Ruiz? Was it Ruiz? Oh no. He beat the guy who beat Ruiz. The big, tall, gross-looking Russian guy. What was his name?
Valuev?
Yes.
Nikolai Valuev?
Yeah, I believe he beat him. So
okay. Well, so anyway, where does AJ go from here? Well, we got a few minutes on this section. Let's right away, the questions were, what do you want next? Are we looking at a Tyson Fury fight in 2021? And he was reluctant to kind of call out Tyson or
saw that too, huh?
James. And I don't know what to make of it. I'm not going to say he's afraid to fight Tyson Fury because, like we've said this before, these guys that are in there fighting, these guys they're not getting afraid. Maybe they might be a little hesitant at this stage to fight a Tyson Fury because I firmly believe nothing that I saw AJ do yesterday afternoon, Tyson Fury couldn't handle.
Yeah.
And in fact, if Tyson Fury could manage to outbox and avoid a big, strong, powerful right hand from Deontay Wilder in the last fight, he'll have no problem avoiding AJ's punch. And AJ doesn't hit nearly as hard as Deontay Wilder. I don't care what anybody says.
No, he doesn't. But the one thing I will say about Anthony Joshua is Anthony Joshua does have talent. Once again, I think a lot of it has to do with where his mind is, where he's at as a fighter, how he's matured as a fighter. I think way too many people have told him how great he is. And I think he really laxed off on all the hard work he did when he went for his gold medal in the Olympics, when he was an amateur. I believe he probably worked harder as an amateur than he is as a pro.
Yeah.
But the thing is, against a guy like Tyson Fury, I absolutely agree with you. Tyson Fury is a guy who, he solved the Deontay Wilder puzzle. He takes a hell of a shot. That gypsy, say what you want to say about the guy, about his singing, whatever, but he takes a hell of a punch. But the one thing I will give Anthony Joshua, I know a lot of people talk about Wilder and the things and the power he possesses, but Anthony Joshua, to me, is a much more polished, much more accurate puncher. Not as hard of a puncher, but if the punches are placed well, he's got the ability to put fighters away. He's shown it time and time again in the past. So to me, Tyson Fury can't use that same recipe that he used to beat Deontay Wilder because he knows Deontay Wilder is a come forward, wild swinging guy. That's not Anthony Joshua. And if he does that, Anthony Joshua could turn this into a boxing match because let's be honest, Tyson Fury can box, but Tyson Fury can be hit. too. So I mean, don't get me wrong, I still put Tyson as the heavy favorite, but there is a remote possibility with Anthony Joshua.
Well, Anthony Joshua would have to be the counterpuncher in that fight because he's not going to take the initiative against a Tyson Fury. He's
No.
just not. He's just not because
Well,
I
he
think
used to. That was the old Anthony Joshua. I wonder what it's going to take to get him back to that aggressive guy that jumped on Klitschko, that jumped on so many other fighters, went in there and just destroyed him. I mean, look at the early fight with Andy Reese.
yeah, he dropped down.
He dropped him. It looked like it was over. You know,
and then in the, and then he got caught. He got caught with that left hook and put him on his butt.
And ever since then, he's kind of been like this deer in the headlights, kind of questioning himself. But the one thing I will say, not to keep running with this, but I was impressed with the fact that Anthony Joshua didn't make those same mistakes and jump in and get wild like he did against Andy Reese. Even when he hurt Pulev and he knew he had him going, he still stayed composed and he waited for it. And it was a beautiful knockout at the end.
Yeah, that right hand that he threw at the end, Pulev got up from the initial uppercut that put him down. It's kind of a delayed reaction uppercut. He had landed, I think, 2 or 3 in a row. And you're thinking to yourself, why does Pulev, what in his mindset is making him think that a good defense is just to go into to shell up and just take those uppercuts? And I think the third one that landed is the one that put him down. And then once the fighting resumed, it was a range finding jab and a boom, a straight right. Fight was over. You know what I mean? Referee jumped. I don't know what the guy was thinking. I mean, at one point we were saying, does this guy know what it is to hold, to use the ring, to move? And like I said, that comes with the intelligence. He reminded me so much. It was like watching Galata fight. It was like watching Galata repeatedly throw those low blows against Riddick Bowe. And even though he knew he wasn't supposed to do it, he was still doing it. And maybe Pulev knew, hey, well, maybe I should try to survive this round, but he didn't have whatever was happening in his brain wasn't registering in his limbs. It was very strange to watch. You're like, what is this guy doing? But
no, you're right. And the thing is, like I said, a guy like that, I mean, we say, where do you go from here? And obviously, I mean, there isn't a whole lot of options. You know what I'm saying? I mean, he could be a stepping stone, a measuring stick for some young guys coming up and stuff.
Yeah.
But other than that, really, he's not going to be a
crop of heavyweights. I mean, who knows? He's fighting on his own platform. Maybe he gets in there, mixes it up with Joe-Joyce. Maybe he's Joe-Joyce's next opponent, or even a comeback fight for someone like Daniel Dubois.
Well, Joe-Joyce knows how to let his right hand go, and so I guess it'll be an easy night for Joe-Joyce. I mean, like I said, I was impressed with what Joe-Joyce did against a tough guy. But getting back real quick on with Anthony Joshua, you look at a possible matchup later on, if there will ever be one with Deontay Wilder. Once Deontay Wilder kind of gets himself mentally back to where he needs to be, he said some kind of crazy things in the past and very un-Deontay-like. But one of the things that I will say about this matchup, obviously Deontay Wilder's got that one-hitter quitter. I don't care who it is. The guy's got proven power. We know Anthony Joshua, I hate to say it, my UK brothers, but he's got that chinny chin UK chin. I'm sorry. It is what it is.
Yeah, he does.
The one thing, I'm going to come back to it again, that Anthony Joshua is doing right, that Deontay Wilder is not doing. Deontay Wilder is not repairing. I'm not saying at this moment. I don't know what's going on, but I'm saying going into the Tyson Fury fight, the last one, he didn't repair the mistakes he made in the first fight.
Yeah.
And there was no plan B. He's still very reckless, very amateurish at times. I know he started later in boxing. Composure, poise is what's going to win these fights. And I'm going to tell you right now, it gives a different perspective for an Anthony Joshua. If he can avoid that big punch and keep Deontay Wilder off balance
and keep him thinking and guessing. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
It could be a different situation. I mean, it's just something to think about.
Yeah, very true. So, okay, real quick, we got a couple minutes left on this section, the zone card. On the undercard, we'll just touch on this real quick.
Sure.
Hughie Fury did win a 10-round unanimous decision over Marius Wack. I think you said you might have caught a little bit of the fight. I watched the fight. It was just uneventful. I mean, Hughie Fury looks like he's definitely filling out now. He's growing. He looked a lot bigger and heavier than he had in the past. He doesn't really possess anything really special, in my opinion. I mean, he's just a guy that, I don't know, man. I mean, he came up short against, Pulev. He's come up short a couple times.
He doesn't hold any of the characteristics of I believe it's his cousin or his uncle?
his cousin.
Because he has such a dry personality, and it's just like, he's another guy where you just kind of wonder how interested you are being a boxer. And I don't know
Yeah,
the situations.
there's just not a whole lot to really be
No,
excited about with Huey Fury. I would
and he
say,
actually showed promise early in his career, but
yeah.
that was when he was on better terms with Tyson. He showed a lot of promise. I mean, he a lot stronger, but since then it's just been like these lackadaisical walkthroughs. So
Yeah, I think outside of Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury, I'd say the most promising heavyweight from the UK is definitely Joe Joyce.
absolutely.
Above Dubois, above like Tyson, I'm sorry, Huey Fury, who we're speaking about now. Joe Joyce is definitely the guy that I
Hey,
think.
so real quick on Dubois, I heard that he did suffer an orbital bone
An orbital
break.
fracture, yeah,
So
yeah,
he
and
did suffer one.
some nerve damage around the eye. But that's probably on a very small scale. You know what I mean? I don't think there's anything in question with his sight or anything like that. But um, he'll be back. I mean, it's gonna take him some time. He'll be back. But
Yeah,
anyways, let's jump over to the next set of fights we had. We
sure.
had a whole weekend full of fights, man. The next, well, actually, this was kind of tough because one of the cards, the ESPN card and the Showtime card, they started about an hour apart, but there was such a delay in the ESPN card because that Florida LSU game went so long. It just
Hey,
was.
not to cut you off, bro, but I saw that play that you were talking about with that kid. And
Oh, that I don't know if,
we'll
for
talk
those
about
of you,
we'll talk about the end when we got some time.
yeah,
But
we'll talk about the end because
yeah,
we coached football for a lot of years. Okay,
yeah.
so anyways, on ESPN, main event there, Shakur Stevenson wins a 10-round unanimous decision over Tokokan Clary, a fighter out of Providence, Rhode Island. He was I believe they said they told his backstory. It was pretty interesting. He was originally from Liberia, the country of Liberia, and I believe he was fostered or adopted by a family in Providence, which is why he added the addition to his name, Clary. That's not his real name. His real name is Toko Khan. Either way, here's a guy that had a glossy record of 28-2. Probably most of those fights were probably on a local, regional level. Providence. I don't know what kind of
I wouldn't think it's really big.
yeah, I mean, the talent pool there, the competition is definitely not what it is elsewhere in the country. But Shakur Stevenson wins a 10-round decision, unanimous. I mean, he won every round. He won every round. You're watching the fight, and Clary had Freddie Roach in his corner, but I do believe Freddie Roach was the last minute fill-in because I believe his trainer tested positive for COVID, so he wasn't allowed to enter the bubble. Either way, the kid wasn't going to not take the fight. So, and not that having his trainer there would have really done anything different. The kid was just overmatched. Shakur's world class. This kid was not, but he still managed to go 10 rounds. Basically, if I'm going to take one thing out of this fight, this is what is apparent to me. Shakur Stevenson's power is not coming with him. It is not translating to 130, and there's no way it's going to transfer when he goes to 135. Yeah. He hit this kid with everything, with the exception of an awkward right jab that the kid kind of walked into, and it kind of sent it back on his heels for a half a second. Shakur Stevenson sounds like he throws punches because every time he throws a punch, he grunts. I felt like I was watching.
Well, he's got that stiffy grab thing going on where when he throws a punch,
no, it wasn't. No, it's like Martina Hingis or
that's it. Yeah, the one that used to make
Monica Seles.
Yeah, there we go.
Every punch is just a grunt. It's like, but
I know I had this. I know I had it there somewhere. So
there's nothing on it. There was nothing on those punches. I mean, he's placing them right. There was quite a few shots I thought were low. The referee Bayless wasn't seeing them, but either way, the kid Khan wasn't going to complain. He was just a tough kid in there to take his beating for 10 rounds. But I don't know, man. Not to get ahead of us, because I know we want to talk a little bit at the end of this program about the announced teams for this weekend. But man, if you were only listening to the sound, and let's say you're listening to this fight on a radio like in the old days, you would think that Shakur Stevenson is the most dominant fighter on the planet. The way Andre Ward and the way Timothy Bradley and Joe Tessitore talk about this kid. And I got to be honest, man, I just don't see it. I do not see him beating the top guys at 135. I don't see him beating Tank Davis because I don't think, as much as he's got the advantage over Tank, I don't think anything that he throws at Tank's going to phase Tank in the least bit. I just don't think his power is transferring up as he's moving up climbing the divisions. I just don't.
Well, I agree with you, bro. And one of the things that I took from the fight is it's this trend that's going on. And this is where I keep coming back to my displeasure with ESPN and the commentators and Andre Ward and Timothy Bradley and that other clown. I'm not even going to mention his name, whatever. Joe Testator or whatever. I don't even know what the hell his name is, but whatever. Who cares? The bottom line is, it's like a good old boys club. And the bottom line, we know you're friends with Terrence Bud-Crawford. We know you're friends with Shakur Stevens. But at some point, you got to understand something. As a host, you have to give options, and you're not giving options. You're trying to tell everybody, and you're trying to sell everybody, just like people trying to sell people on a vaccine that they have doubts about. You're trying to sell us that this guy is greater than he really is. Well, I'm going to tell you right now. He didn't beat a world-class fighter last night.
No.
World class is coming up. That was the only smart thing that Timothy Bradley said. And he said, the true tests are coming up. That's going to be possibly the Mikael Berchelts and others. And I'll tell you right now, that's going to be a big test for Shakur Stevens, because you can be cute. You can land those punches. You can be successful with something like that against a Jolet Gonzalez. But against a guy like Miguel Berchelt, who's going to come right at you, and he's going to do everything it takes. The guy's an expert at cutting off the ring. You're not going to be able to get away with that. And those little inside flurries that you do against these other guys with your speed, it's not going to work against a guy like Miguel Berchelt.
That standing in close range and
Exactly.
able to pick off shots, that will not work, because Berchelt will hit you on the elbows, the
elbows,
shoulders,
the arms, the neck. He hits you wherever. Doesn't matter.
Hit you in
the
the chest.
Brings true 130-pound power. Not like Shakur Stevens. But I don't like Shakur's attitude. Remember what I told you?
Shit.
Yeah,
it was absolutely horrible after, during, and after the fight. I don't know if you heard him talking to his grandfather in the corner during the fight, and he's over here, he's dropping. They had to keep beeping because every other word is the F word.
And it's his grandfather, man.
But then after the fight, Toka Khan, you could tell he was wanting to give, a little bit of dab to, and Shakur just in his own mind just ignored him. Like the kids, it's a false sense of security and it's a false arrogance, because, like I said, he didn't set the world on fire. No, watching that fight, I kind of understand why Andre Ward is so tight with him. I know they're in the same management team, or they were when Andre was
fighting. Because they both have that same delusions of grandeur.
Bored me to death.
Oh yeah,
I was watching. I literally was bored out of my mind watching that fight.
He regressed. Honestly, if you go back, I was just interested. So I went back and I watched his fight against Joet Gonzalez, and Shakur's starting to get. You're absolutely right, bro. He's starting to kind of get like it's almost like a mixture between a Mayweather and the boring ass Andre Ward. And the thing is that I didn't like his attitude. And once again, I'm going to say this, and I know a lot of great trainers out there will say the same thing. This is one of the things I learned when I was coming in boxing. If you're truly taking your career seriously, never read your press clippings, because they're going to try to fill your head with false hope. The only hope that is true and valid is what you give yourself, or comes from your trainer when you're successful in the ring. Right now, Shakur Stevens is feeling, he's calling out names. When I hear names like Lomachenko and these others, I look at him like, dude, you're not even there yet. Okay. And if you really were serious, believe me, you're going to push that wrong button and someone's going to make it happen. Okay.
Based on
right now, he needs,
based on what I saw last night, Lomachenko has an easy night with him.
Oh yeah, because I mean, there's no threat there. I mean, speed wise, they're about equal. Power wise, you got to give the edge to Lomachenko. Youth, you're going to give it to Shakur Stevenson, but experience in the big show goes a long way. And Shakur Stevens, as much as he thinks that he's a pay-per-view headlining guy, he's not. Believe me, you find out the hard way. Danny Garcia found out this week against Errol-Spence. That was one of the things. I think he had a little bit of that deer in headlights because he'd never been in this situation before.
Well, me and you talked about something yesterday after the fights. We talked a little bit about these prospects that Bob Arum is developing. And Bob Arum has always been good at developing prospects in the past. He's developing prospects now, but he's really giving them a false, like you said, a false sense of security. He's matching these guys perfectly. I fully believe, and this will kind of segue into the next fight of the night. I fully believe that Shakur Stevenson is going to fall into the same traps that Felix Verdejo did.
Absolutely.
You're listening to too much around you. You're thinking you're invincible. And we already know that Shakur Stevenson, just like Verdejo was winning fights and he was on top of the world, and he went out and he's doing things he shouldn't be doing, like riding a motorcycle.
Felix Diaz, same thing happened to him too.
Same thing. Shakur Stevenson's, we know about a year ago, there's that footage of him and he's in Miami partying with God knows who. He's getting in physical altercations with him and his friends, with a guy and a guy's girlfriend, because they're disrespecting the guy's girlfriend, and they're like doubling up and triple teaming.
Is that the one when Shakur came back and hit the guy when the guy was on the ground?
Yeah. I mean, just shit like that. So the kid mentally, you already know mentally he's weak and makes bad decisions. I hate to say it, man. And like I said, we'll talk about Felix Verdejo next. I see him going down that same path because you're being fed that you're you're the greatest. And as soon as somebody stands there, like a big Miguel Burchelt or anybody else in that division stands there and hits him in the mouth, then we're going to see what this guy is really made of. I mean, he
Well,
could
you,
prove us
yeah,
all
you,
wrong, but
yeah,
based
you
on the
can.
eye test, I don't see it. I just don't
No.
see it.
And like I said, I mean, I was never super high on Shakur Stevens, but I felt that when he was humble, when he was, I kind of looked at him, and I hate to say this, kind of like a Steve Urkel, like this goofy guy who's like, but
He is goofy looking,
but
too.
he's changed his whole attitude. He's got that same attitude, and I know it's because of Bud Crawford.
Yeah.
He's got this, I'm better than anybody else. Are you really going to step up to me? And people are like, yeah, hey, I want to fight you, Shakur. And be like, no, do you really want to fight me? Yeah, dude, I just said I want to fight you, dude. No, do you really want to? I say, are you trying to convince them not to fight you? You're trying to convince yourself
Yeah.
that you shouldn't fight this guy.
Yeah, he's selling wolf tickets, bro. That's ultimately what it comes down to.
Yeah. And the thing is, like right now with like Shakur Stevens, that's the trend in boxing right now. I mean, and we're going to talk about it in a minute, but even guys like Chris Colbert, who, I saw his thing, with Counterpunch, the documentary years ago and stuff, and I followed him in the amateurs. But here's another one that just these guys, their heads are in the clouds, and I'm going to go back to what I said before. When you first become an amateur boxer, there's something that they do. If you have a good trainer, they sit you in a back room and they sit you, from my situation, I sat in the corner next to a smelly ass freaking jockstrap build freaking locker. And I was given a copy of the Queensberry rules. And I was taught to understand that even though a lot of the rules have changed over the time, the ethical aspect of it, which was, okay, respect the sport, okay, don't use dirty tactics. Most of all, respect yourself and your opponent, the referees, understanding that anything outside of that, back in those days, you were done. It was like the dark days of Hollywood. You did something bad and you got in that black book.
Yeah.
Guys don't do that anymore. There's no respect for.
I think they see how far they could bend and push the rules. That's what I think. And I saw Shakur hitting on the break a couple times, and like I said, there was quite a few punches that I thought he threw low. Never once got a warning. He might have got one warning, half-hearted warning from Kenny Bayless, but
Chris Colbert, like I said, in his fight against the Jaime kid, he hit this kid. So I haven't seen a low blow that low in years, and this kid was forced after 30 seconds. Okay, this kid got into. I'm like, come on, man. This is ridiculous, dude.
Well, let's talk about the other fight that the co-main event on the ESPN card to Shakur Stevenson. So once again, we'll just recap. Shakur Stevenson wins unanimous decision, 10 rounds over Toko Khan. Okay, in the co-main, ended up being a phenomenal fight. Going into after the first round, I thought the fight was going to end quick. Felix Verdejo ends up losing by 9th round TKO to Masayoshi Nakatani, the guy that went 12 rounds with was it 10 or was it 12 rounds with Teofimo Lopez, and gave Lopez a tough time.
It was it 10 or 12 rounds?
When he fought Teofimo, I believe it was a 10-round fight. Or it could have been an eliminator, so it might have been a 12-round fight.
Oh, it was a 12-round fight.
It was a 12-round fight. Okay. Either way, okay, so
that's why I'm putting my thing on right here. This is for Nakatani right here, dude.
Nakatani, yeah. Either way, so Nakatani, I mean, here's a guy that got dropped in the first round with a hard right hand, but in that first one was a hard right. He got dropped again, I think, in the 4th round. He just kept applying the pressure. His recuperative skills or recuperative powers were just on point last
Wolverine,
night,
bro.
and he just kept coming and coming and coming. And the one thing we talked about this as well. The one thing that Felix Verdejo lacks, not heart and not skill, and not even a chin. It's conditioning. He looked, after about 4 or 5 rounds, he looked completely gassed. And when those final punches landed in that ninth round, one of them was a jab that put him down. It was a nice stiff jab that put him down on the seat of his pants, and it threw him into the ropes, and it hurt him. I said, man, at that point, it was all conditioning or lack thereof that was coming to fruition, coming to the forefront.
Yeah, it was honestly the highlight of the entire card. It was
best fight of the night, I think.
When I heard the matchup some months ago, I thought it was a great matchup, especially with Verdejo. There was so much hype, and I'm not going to say hype. This was proof. The guy was a stellar amateur. I mean, just looked amazing, just walking through people, and then something happened in Fantasy Springs. But the bottom line is, Felix Verdejo is like Anthony Joshua in a lot of ways. it's always been that conditioning. It's just like going back to Vladimir Klitschko, a guy who had so much skill, but what was his biggest knock other than his chin was okay?
Yeah, he would gas.
He would gas. And it kind of makes you wonder, because at some point, you know, Verdejo, you know, he's gonna have to go back and watch his tape and go, look at, I was doing pretty much everything I was supposed to do, but I gas. So whoever my strength and conditioning coach or whatever my head trainer's got me doing, it's not working. Now I understand he's with the new trainer now, but the bottom line is it's sad because a guy like Felix Verdejo, his story should end differently. He's got that. I mean, if the guy would have went in there and stopped Nakatani, let's say in 5 rounds, after that, knocked down in the 4th round and knocked him out in the next round, which was all possible.
Yeah, very possible.
Guess what? I guarantee you there would be talks. Talks on Verdejo, but walks on the Lopez family because they're not going to want any part of this guy based on the fact they couldn't dent Nakatani.
That's true. They couldn't dent Nakatani. I think
that was a weight drain guy who couldn't even stand at the scale.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and it's one of those things where, man, it's like he had Nakatani and let him off the hook. He let him live to fight another day, and he paid for it because
we've said this time and time again, bro.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, Verdejo, they were saying his trainer was telling him, hey, just when you get him hurt, not going to just still be patient. And I think under the circumstances of knowing what you got, knowing he's had maybe stamina issues in the past, I would have said, hey, jump all over this guy. If you gas yourself out, guess what? The next round, you're going to do nothing but run and hold for, take a round off, get warned by the referee, whatever. They're not going to disqualify you. Get on your bike, man, and just move until you can get your second win. But I don't know, man. He let this guy off the hook, and man, he is right now. Here's a kid right now that's probably just seriously doubting his future in this sport, because this is a fight that he should have won.
He needed this fight, bro.
And where do you go from here? I mean, unless he comes back as an opponent and just pulls a major upset, knocks somebody out cold in 2 rounds or something, then he's gonna, and he's a young man still too. That's what's sad.
26.
Yeah, something like that. Young guy.
The sad thing about Verdejo is he's not really a big guy for the division. He's not really. And in the right shape, you know, he could probably drop down.
Back to 130, right?
Back to 130. And, you know, and I'm pretty sure he's going to carry that power. The biggest problem that I got, and this goes with trainers, just because you acquire a fighter and you're training them from this point on to their next fight, it doesn't mean you know the fighter. Because obviously the trainer who was working with Verdejo never took time to look at the fact that Verdejo had one knock. His one Achilles heel has been his conditioning, and he did nothing to rectify that. The fact that he held Verdejo back and not letting Verdejo's natural instinct, which Verdejo before would have ended this guy, but he held him back to say, hey, you know, he might still be dangerous. He doesn't know Verdejo. Like any trainer will tell you, you got a wounded animal, put him to sleep. And they let him off the hook. And I was telling you that on the phone. I was like, dude, you give this Nakatani a chance. You let him get past this storm, and he's going to be the storm.
Well, and even Tim Bradley was saying the same thing. He was saying, he was echoing Ismail Salas and saying, hey, well, you know, you got to be careful because a wounded animal is a dangerous animal. It's like, yeah, well, how did that work out, Tim Bradley? He held back and took his foot off the gas, and guess what? He ended up getting stopped by Nakatani, getting dropped in that round.
I encourage people all the time, and hopefully once we get our new format that we're working on right now, which is going to be amazing and, you know, stellar, hopefully that we're going to be able to do this thing to where when you're watching these fights, just tune them out and tune us on, and we'll give you the round by round. We'll act like we're the analysts there, right there in the front on our new program. And it's the same thing, because you don't want to listen to these guys, because Timothy Bradley, let's be honest, he was a fortunate fighter. I don't have anything against him personally, but he was a fortunate fighter. He was gifted a bout against Manny Pacquiao that everybody in the world knows he lost. Okay, you go back to Ruslan Palaknikov, beat him in that fight too. There's another gift horse in the mouth. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And don't even get me started on Andre Ward. Okay, Andre Ward talks about Mayweather and his non-competitive attitude at the later part of his career. Dude, you invented it.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway,
but congratulations to Nakatani, man. What a
And then I guess after the fight, he had to go to the hospital. There was some blurring in his left eye, some vision.
He's got. I guess he suffered a orbital bone fracture in the Teofimo fight. Supposedly.
Yeah, and which just seems very, very common now in these fighters. I mean, this is how many guys now.
It's reminding me of the NFL concussion situation.
Yeah, Daniel Dubois, Nakatani, Kell Brook twice. I mean, God knows how many others out there have undiagnosed. You know, and it might be these gloves, man. The way that they make these gloves now, and the way that they're allowing these fighters to wrap their hands. I don't know what it is, but either way,
something's happening. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, so as far as the ESPN card, I agree with you. The best fight of the night, and congratulations to Masayoshi Nakatani. I mean, he put himself right back in the mix for a shot. You know, I'm not saying he's going to get a rematch against Teofimo, who holds all the belts currently right now, but eventually those belts are going to get separated, and God knows what can happen. He's a tough kid. Hopefully that eye injury is not too serious, and he can come back at the early part of next year to, keep that momentum going, because he had a long layoff after the last fight. Could you imagine if this guy fights on a regular, more consistent basis? He's going to be
17
dangerous.
months. He was off 17 months. Right?
Yeah, it's almost a year and a half.
You made a good point too in that when we were discussing this fight too, not to keep stretching this, but was the power aspect and what Verdejo was able to do, what Teofimo couldn't. So what does that say about Teofimo Lopez?
I think it very clearly shows that his power is overrated. Against the right opponent, he looks devastating. But against the right opponent, anybody could look devastating.
Yeah.
I mean, Nakatani.
Against a Mason Menard, he's going to look devastating. Against a guy who comes in, defenseless, who
has a history of being knocked out cold, he's going to look devastating. Diego Chavez, no, I'm sorry, not Diego Chavez. I'm sorry, Diego Magdaleno. I mean, God, he's been knocked out viciously multiple times. Flanagan knocked him out. Teofimo, somebody else just knocked him out in one round. A few months ago. I mean, in one round, the first punch he hit him with, he's damaged goods.
He's been damaged goods.
He's been damaged goods for a few years now.
But, yeah. And I said that going into the fight, but see, that's good. I hate to say it, but that's good matchmaking on the part of Teofimo Lopez, whoever his management is, because they're looking out there and they're finding guys that got a name, but they're damaged.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I don't even want to even dredge up the whole Lomachenko thing, whatever happened, because we know what happens if there's a rematch, because out of the two fighters, there's one fighter that really truly belongs there, and he'll get his titles back based on the fact that he's a fighter that knows how to evolve, unlike a guy who rather spend all his time on social media and listen to his dad and thinking that he's something that he's not.
Exactly.
And
I look at it like this: when those fighters when the two fighters, Lomachenko and Teofimo, was actually stood there and both fought,
it was all Lomachenko there.
It was all Lomachenko. But like I said, for reasons unbeknownst to us, Lomachenko decided to kind of coast way too much in those early parts.
We got our theory on that, and I don't want to. It's not about burning bridges and stuff like this, but I'm going to go back to it again. Like I said, I mean, don't get me wrong. I have no problem with a person training fighters who have never fought, never even laced up a pair of gloves, never taken a punch from another man in a competitive bout. You don't have to be, it's just like in football. You don't have to be a football player to be a great coach. Okay. But in a situation like this, you can't let your instincts take over. And I think that's what happened in that Lomachenko fight, but we'll discuss that another time.
Got it. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into the fights that took place on Showtime.
Yeah.
At Mohegan Sun, I believe they were fighting it, right? These were, I mean, in terms of the night, these were probably the there was no titles on the line with these fights. They were probably, of the three fights, they were probably the least, I don't want to say least important, but they weren't stellar. But they weren't stellar on paper, but they ended up being competitive or good fights.
Yeah.
Richardson Hitchens wins a 10-round split decision over Argenis Mendes. Now, the first thing I want to say about that is I don't remember I think it was Don Ackerman I think he gave the fight to Argenis Mendes, which resulted in Richardson. Richard Hitchens only winning a split decision, which was shocking because I thought he won almost every damn round.
So did I.
But either way, I mean, he's a guy. And I mean, you said earlier about Verdejo not being a real big guy. Hitchens fights at 140, but here's a guy, he does not look like a junior welterweight to me. He looks smaller to me. He looks more like a lightweight to me.
Looks like honestly, he looks like he could make 126 if he really wanted to.
Yeah, he's real thin for him. He's skilled.
Mendes is a former champion,
Yeah.
So I mean, it is what it is, what I'm saying? But I mean, it was close to them taking something away from him because, let's be honest, he's the type of guy that can end up in the ring with a guy like Shakur Stevens or one of these other guys later on.
Yeah, it will very, very true, especially if someone like Teofimo does follow up on his promise or his intention to move up to 140. I mean, there's some guys out there. So anyways, the main event for that night on Showtime was Chris Colbert, and he won a 11th round. It was a TKO or a KO? TKO.
It was a TKO. They stopped it once the guy hit the ground.
Over Jaime Arbolito, and there was a series of 4 knockdowns in that fight, right?
Yes.
And I mean, Colbert he actually admitted he did an interview, I think, prior to the fight, where he says, "Hey, I talk a lot, so I got to kind of back it up." And he does talk. I mean,
he does.
He does talk a lot. And I don't know how to feel about that. I mean, I don't mind guys talking to sell a fight, but when it's borderline disrespect to the other fighter, I mean, this is not MMA. If you want to do all that nasty shit and just make it all personal, then just go to MMA, because that's encouraged over there.
Well, that's the thing is I noticed Chris Colbert and his enthusiasm and his confidence, it doesn't come over to me with disrespectful like Shakur Stevens and T-Bud and a lot of others. His is more or less, he thinks he's Deion Sanders. He thinks he's primetime. And one thing that primetime used to do, he made it all about a show about himself. Yeah. That's Chris Colbert. And don't get me wrong, he has a lot of natural skill. He can bang. He's got speed. He does things naturally in there that, I'll be honest with you, if you had to gauge, the skill level between, say, a Shakur Stevens and a Chris Colbert, to me, honestly, it's not even close, because whatever Shakur Stevens does in the ring, Chris Colbert does better. I'm telling you right now.
I agree, and I think he punches faster. I think he's quicker handed, and I definitely think he hits harder. Like I said,
very elusive, very hard to hit. I mean, the only times he got hit by the other kid was when he put himself in a situation on the ropes. It was almost like he was playing possum. It's like he was doing it on purpose.
He's like he wanted the kid to come in and he wanted to let himself feel the punches a little bit, Yeah. But either way, I mean, that was a very impressive performance as far as I'm concerned by Colbert.
And a gallant effort by the other kid too.
By Arboleda, yeah, he tried.
He really tried. Did.
He tried.
And the thing was, this is a guy who...
And Mendes tried too. Mendes tried. He was just a little bit, he's a little bit probably on the back nine, if you use the golf analogy. Yeah. But I mean, he's still a kid that's going to give, Richard Hitchens a good test. Both good prospects. I mean, Showtime and PBC, we talked about this, I think, a week ago. They don't get nearly enough credit for developing prospects. But these prospects, the announce team is keeping it real on these guys. They're not selling us a line of magic beans like Jack and the Beanstalk, like Bradley, Ward, Kriegel, Tessitore, and even on DAZN, with Chris Mannix and those guys. These guys all just sell us just, it's like they don't think that we can see with our own eyes and interpret what we're seeing with our own eyes. People that are watching these fights, right? These aren't like mainstream fights this weekend. I mean, we know what we're watching. We know what we're
diehard people would watch the fights this past week.
Boxing fans. We're not casuals that tune in, for whatever reason. But
getting back, but real quick, but you're absolutely right. I just want to make a point on that. And so this is on that undercard of the Verdejo Stevenson, Joshua Franco's brother, Jesse Rodriguez, fought on that card against a guy, an old veteran in Saul Juarez, who was fighting 2 divisions out of his normal division. And they kept emphasizing on the fact that this guy had never been stopped. And once again, they were trying to build up another top ranked fighter and stuff. And of course he stopped Juarez because Juarez looked like he hadn't been in the gym in years. Yeah. He was out. It was a joke. And then, so now they're trying to make him the second coming and then talking about how impressive he is and how he's going to be just like the other Franco. And I'm thinking, like, the one that lost to Maloney, it's like, at the end of the day, stop beating us, these fighters with these undefeated glossy records, fighting these, shop worn, half dead, half in a freaking grave fighters, and try to make us believe that they're truly talented. You want to make me think he's talented? Put him in there with a guy that's at equal stature, or maybe just one drip down, and we might talk.
Yeah, true. And yeah, very true. Well, since you're talking about the ESPN card, we'll just touch on it briefly for 1 minute. Berlanga wins his 16th consecutive fight by first round KO against a guy that had, from the moment the bell rang, he had a sparring partner mentality. And apparently he's known more for being a sparring partner to guys like Canelo and whatever, and Andre Ward, than actually fights in the ring. And watching the guy fight or not fight and basically just be like the deer in the headlights, you're like, at some point, Berlanga and his team keep saying this, we want competition to step up. Hey, the onus is all on you. It isn't like this is your 8th fight and you're still fighting guys that have no business in the ring with you. That was your 16th fight.
You're still fighting guys at this level.
Yeah, Lomachenko barely has 16 fights, and he's won titles in 3 divisions. Okay, guys like that. But Berlanga is continuing to find these guys that, like you said, gonna make this guy look like a monster. And the one thing I will say about that, Ulysses, the one good thing he did in the first minute of the fight, he threw a couple flicking jabs, couple of nice stiff jabs.
And had Berlanga reeling.
Well, every time he threw it, it was smacking him square in the face. And I said, here's a guy that is so one-track minded. When this guy finally gets in there with somebody that can box and punch, I got to be honest with you, I don't see this kid. I think I think this whole thing comes crashing to the ground. I just do. And that's not hating on the guy.
Yeah.
That's just what I see. I see a guy who, after about a minute and a half of winging these big punches, was already winded. And if he wouldn't have got him out of there in the first round, he might have, who knows? It doesn't take a whole lot to knock a fighter out when you're exhausted, a la Felix Verdejo. I think that was a more fatigue that caused that knockout loss than it was actual punches. Than it was actual punches.
I agree with you 100%. My issue with Berlanga is he's another one of these guys out there that keeps, barking how great they are. And I'm like, dude, you haven't fought anybody yet. So let's be honest. I noticed that once again, the clowns at ESPN, Timothy Bradley and Andre Ward, they kept saying about how this Ulysses guy had done sparring with Canelo-Alverez. Let me tell you something, people out there. There's two kind of sparring partners that you get in the gym. There's the kinds that prepare you for a fight that they bring in to be competitive. And then there's the guys they bring in
just to give you rounds.
Just to give you rounds to get you warm up. If you honestly think this guy was ever competitive for even 2 seconds in a bout, in a sparring match against Canelo-Alverez,
you're
lying to yourself.
Exactly.
If you think you can gauge this Berlanga's talent because he knocked this guy out, maybe this guy did 3 rounds sparring with Canelo-Alverez. Let me tell you something right now. Berlanga reminds me of a guy a few years back that was doing the same thing. Maybe some of you hardcore boxing fans know him. His name was Tyrone Brunson. They used to call him Two Guns. 24-0.
99% of the people that watch
24
boxing have
knockouts.
No idea who you're talking about right now, bro.
24-0, 24 knockouts. But what happened when he finally had to step up against a decent fighter? And that fighter wasn't even a great fighter. It was basic Breas Prescott, a guy who had already been on the downfall. And Prescott knocks him out. The thing is, I'm saying
Jeff Lacey. Jeff Lacey's destroying everybody. He gets in there with the Joe Kazagi and gets beaten.
Berlanga's not even a Lacey. I mean, at least Lacey fought some decent fighters. Berlanga's fought nobody. Yeah.
He's fought nobody. Really, though.
That's what Tyrone Brunson did. Tyrone Brunson, I mean, you looked at the guys on his record. I mean, they were all half dead. And then he finally got in there with the fucking halfway decent fighter, and he got knocked out. And from that point on, it was one knockout after another knockout after another.
Yeah, I see that coming. And I look at the 168-pound division where Berlanga's competing at. You got guys like Caleb Plant, David Benavidez. You got guys like Bivol that have even expressed a little bit of interest in dropping down from 175 back to 168.
That would actually make sense, bro.
Let's see him get into the ring with any of these guys and see what happens. I don't think he gets out of one round against Benavidez, to be quite honest with you.
Well, I mean, the thing is, it's like, you look at the punches that he's throwing, and once again, it was kind of the Shakur.
Just winging
power. I mean, they're not
against a guy that's. I mean, there's hardly a jab. It's just I hit somebody, I hurt him, they go into a shell, and then I'm just gonna throw caution to the wind.
You know what it remind me of, bro? It remind me of like being over at the bowling alley and hitting that punching machine. That punching machine because it doesn't move and then it makes that nice loud sound when you hit it. Yeah, that's what these guys are. When you're not moving, you have no reason being in the ring. But let's be honest, Berlanga is another media hype tool that people like, the clowns at ESPN and Top Rank and them are going to try to feed us and try to make us feel like this guy's going to be a legitimate threat. Well, let me tell you something right now. If he's serious, if he even gets an opportunity to break the top 10, if he's fortunate, if for some reason he falls into a well and discovers all this skill, there's real dragons, tigers, but overall monsters like David Benavidez waiting there to just lick his bones clean.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, well said. So you would touch a little bit on about the broadcasting, and we can kind of touch a little bit on I know you wanted to talk a little bit about the broadcast team, and we're kind of doing that now. What did you think overall of the Showtime team covering these fights? I think Showtime guys keep it real still. The Mora Ronaldos, they still keep it real. They don't oversell a product.
I just got an issue with Bernstein. I don't like Bernstein. I don't like Al Bernstein personally. I don't
either. I've lost all respect for Al Bernstein.
Yeah, and I think the fact that they got what's his name, the one who does the who scores the fights, the little worm. What's his name?
Steve Farhood.
Yeah, that come on. The guy's so far off every time. I mean, it's just absolutely ridiculous.
I think he does the scoring for boxing scene. I think because Steve
Farhood
and boxing scene are usually way off, but.
But I think Showtime did a better job. The Zone. I mean, I still got my issue.
It was Brian Kenny covering the fight. Brian Kenny, Sergio Mora.
And I still got my issues with Sergio Mora.
Yeah, he didn't do too bad this weekend. He was given a pretty fair assessment.
Well, because he didn't have a fighter in there he can gauge himself with. See, Sergio Mora, to me, he always looks at a fighter, and I'm just going to pick one fighter in particular that he seems to have a bone to pick with. And believe me, if Sergio Mora has really got a bone to pick with, I'm pretty sure, one day they might meet each other, and that's Jamie-Munguia.
Yeah.
he's always seemed to got a bone to pick with Jaime Munguia. No matter what Munguia does good, he ignores, and he's always trying to point out his flaws. Let me tell you something.
He's a very jealous guy. Very jealous guy.
At 22 years old or 23, that Jaime Munguia he's accomplished more in his career than you ever did. Okay, the Latin Snake. You weren't even accepted.
What did he have? Five knockouts in his entire career.
His claim to fame was his win on the Contender, and then his victory that he got over Vernon Forrest. He did knock down Daniel Jacobs, but every pig has its day. Shit happens. You know what I'm saying? But the bottom line is Sergio Mora, I just don't like how he comes across and how he's so critical of people. And if you were so knowledgeable and if you were so well versed at those skills, then why did you never do it in the ring, Sergio?
Exactly. Thank you. Couldn't have said it better myself.
I'm just going to say it real. I'm going to keep it real. When I hear guys like Tim Bradley tearing down other fighters and saying they don't got this, I want to tell them, really, Tim? Because I can remember a lot of situations. I can remember when you almost packed it in against Junior Witter when you were out there. Come on, man. Let's keep it real.
Well, talking about Tim Bradley, you mentioned something earlier about him getting that gift decision against Manny Pacquiao, which we all agree.
Absolutely.
As far as I'm concerned, I
couldn't stand Pacquiao at the time.
Yeah, and a lot of people knocked Jeff Horn for the decision he got down there in Australia. Well, Tim Bradley was the receiving end of a very similar decision. But in fact, I think the Jeff Horn Manny Pacquiao fight was a much closer fight than the Pacquiao Bradley fight, the first fight. I think Manny clearly won. Now, I thought Manny won should have got the nod against Jeff Horn, but Jeff Horn did make it ugly and did win some rounds. You know what I mean? He did win some rounds. He fought and pushed Manny Pacquiao to the brink in a few of those rounds where you just saw his natural size kind of taken over. He was so much bigger than Pacquiao in that ring that night or that afternoon down there in Australia. But Timothy Bradley, like you said, I mean, if these guys know so much and if they're so well versed in the skill set and what it takes, why did they never exhibit it when they were fighting? I don't know, and it's one thing to have an opinion, but they're so matter of fact about it. It's like this is the Bible. I am Jesus. I'm a disciple. I'm reading this. You have to listen to what I say because I know everything. And I don't buy into it. I think the best announcers out there in boxing, sadly, aren't working right now. Paulie Malignaggi, I believe he's doing something for Sky Sports, I believe, right? He's still covering those fights, I believe. But I
like Teddy Atlas.
He's great. Teddy Atlas is no longer working because he was too opinionated. Isn't that funny how the guys that actually have opinions that are actually give a shit about the sport, Paulie Malignaggi, Teddy Atlas, are the ones that get ostracized and basically put in like you said earlier, like that black book, what can't have them?
If Paulie Malignaggi was in the situation of Timothy Bradley making these same statements and stuff, he'd be admonished for it. But the problem is, Paulie Malignaggi can get away with doing that because, to me, Paulie Malignaggi had a much more successful career than Timothy Bradley. Timothy Bradley, you look at a lot, like I said, going back in his past, his gifts that he got against Ruslan Pletnikov, the other guy,
Manny Pacquiao,
Lamont Peterson. I mean, the list goes on. But the thing is about Timothy Bradley is that he sits next to a guy that thinks that the only person that be sitting on the other side of him is Jesus Christ. And that's Andre Ward. Because let me tell you right now, Andre Ward, if he was a true fighter, if he was a true man, he would admit what happened in that first situation against Kovalov. He would admit about the fighters that he didn't want to fight. When he did want to fight the Dawsons, when the Dawsons were hot, he only wanted to step in there when the Dawsons were fucked up in the head and on their way out the window, So there were so many fighters that he avoided for whatever reason and stuff like this. He would take these long hiatuses and do all this stuff where he had to go fight in this little chicken shack out where he's from and stuff. But the bottom line is,
the Oracle, where they would give you you walk in with a $10 bill and a can of beans and you get a front row seat.
The guy even went as far as when he got knocked down by Kovalov, that it was more of a flash knockdown and he'd been hit harder in sparring. And I was like, you know what? Now you just really show me. Let's be honest. Andre Ward retired from boxing not because there was no more future opportunities.
He wanted nothing to do with Beterbiev, Bivol, and
he wanted nothing to do with Canelo. Canelo was coming after him. He would have eventually been there, possibly, or who knows who else. This slew of Russian monsters was biting at the bit coming up. They were in their 6 and 8 rounders, and eventually they were going to be in their 10 and 12 rounders. And Andre said, "You know what? I'm out."
I'm out. Exactly right. Because Andre is not that old. He probably could still be fighting right now. But like you said, instead of calling out or actually acknowledging guys like Beterbiev, Gvozdyk, Bivol, he was wasting his time talking about a guy 2 divisions below him in Gennady Golovkin. Constantly
I saw
disparaging-
him dissecting and trying to throw like rotten apples at Usyk. And I'm like, whoa, hold on a second, dude. It's like, if you're so great, Andre Ward, take a page out of Floyd Mayweather, but take it to a real level, not the clown shit that he keeps doing. And I'm sure that Usyk, they can make this fight happen. If we can make Roy Jones, Mike Tyson, we can make freaking Andre Ward, Alexander Usyk. And I tell you now, Usyk gives you a boxing lesson. You'll be Jeff Lacey this time.
Yeah, gives him a box knocks him and knocks him out.
Oh yeah,
Knocks
absolutely.
Knocks him cold. So,
but you look, honestly, for people that don't understand what we're talking about and why we're so frustrated, go to Boxing Rec. It's boxing. It's just Box Rec, BOX, REC.com. Type in Andre Ward's name. Look at the fighters that he fought, but also look at the fighters' previous fight and then their future fight after Andre Ward. And it'll tell you a lot about the type of people that Andre Ward was going after. No different than what Manny Pacquiao did for years with his catch weight. There's a lot of bad stigma that's happening in boxing. Manny started it with the catch weight. Mayweather,
Floyd too. Floyd as well. With the
yeah. But I mean, now you got Floyd making a circus mockery and stuff. And I said to him the other day on my Twitter, and I don't like to, I'm not trying to say that Floyd wasn't accomplished at one time, because he was. But don't sit here and embarrass yourself by trying to say this is the greatest fighter who ever laced up gloves, because I got a whole long list of fighters, believe me, that I could name off that Floyd wouldn't even mention their name. So the bottom line is, Floyd, go fight, go do the little circus thing you're going to do, because you're not going to get $1 out of me. You're not even going to get viewership. I won't even watch it on retape free on YouTube, because that's the clown that you become. If you want to be Muhammad Ali fighting against a karate guy from Japan, go do it. And then I saw somebody compare Oscar De La Hoya's fight against Shaquille O'Neal. No, there you had two equal retired athletes. One was a monster and one was a multiple division champion. I give Oscar all the freaking props in the world for even getting the goddamn ring with that monster. I don't think I would do it.
That guy's 7'2", 300.
And he won. Yeah. And they give him shit about it. And it was a fun thing. There was never any talk from Shaquille O'Neal telling Oscar De La Hoya, "You're a bitch. I'll knock you. I'll end you out like this punk." And I'm not going to mention his name, because it was all done for a good reason. Yeah, it was done for charity.
Yeah,
it was like Rocky Balboa against Thunderlips. He won in at the end. It was like, "Can I take a picture with you?" It's like, what we do for money or whatever, so
yeah. Charity hurts.
Charity hurts, man.
Anyways, so that's our little take on on what some of these announced teams are trying to sell you. If you're a boxing fan out there, if you're watching our channel or any of their channels out there, and you tune into the fights, you kind of know what you're seeing. You don't need these guys to try to sell you something. These snake oil salesmen, that's why I equate them to. They're trying to sell you something that's not there, because you could just use your own intelligence and your own eyes and see what you got in front of you. And at the end of the day, you can only shine something up so much, man. I mean, eventually the truth's going to come out and it's going to tarnish. And I hate to say that we're going to see that with guys like Shakur Stevenson, Edgar Berlanga, unless these guys really make significant steps up in competition and prove it. Because as far as I'm concerned, they haven't proved anything. They have not proved anything, but they're getting the accolades like they have. These guys are getting more accolades than guys like Lomachenko, guys like Manny Pacquiao, guys like Errol Spence that have actually out there doing it. I mean, look at the disrespect that was given to Danny Garcia after his fight against Errol Spence. Just total disrespect. Like
Dubois. I mean, the thing is, bro, is like, even your days back in the gym, I remember how many times did you see a fighter that was in there sparring and the guy had 15, 16 fights, but he didn't talk. He wasn't really looked upon as nothing. Now you got guys out there with 15, 16 fights, like a Berlanga who's fought a bunch of freaking, hand-picked, opponents, and his head's filled with this, like, I'm the greatest thing. And for him to even mention a name like Canelo, if I was his trainer, I'd be like, dude, don't ever say that again, because you're not only making yourself look stupid, you're making this entire promotion look dumb. And we don't hire dumb people. And you're just being really dumb, because in order for you even, do you think Canelo would even consider you? Canelo would be like, all right, dude, actually go out and fight some fights where you actually beat some guys. I'll tell you what, I'll give you 2 fighters within 168 pounds. And if you beat them, I'll fight you. Okay. So let me see. I'll give you Daniel Jacobs, and I'll give you
Joe Smith. No, Joe Smith fights.
No. I'll give you who's another one? David Benavidez, who's not a champion. Beat those guys, and then I'll fight you. Dude, you're not even gonna make it to the first fight's press conference before reality sits in and you go, dude, what the hell did I just bite off here?
Yeah,
You know,
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
it's just we got a little bit of time. I know we're running over a little bit and stuff, but I really
It's
got nothing. I got nothing to do. So I
yeah.
don't know if you got anything to do, but
Well, I mean, I think we're going to come back Tuesday. We're going to talk a little bit more about. Oh, let's touch on one thing that happened over the weekend that we did not talk about was that the Matt Korobov fight. Matt Korobov fought and ended up losing by fifth round stoppage because of an Achilles injury he suffered. I
I
think it
completely
happened.
missed that fight.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. He ended up losing, and I think at this point his body's just breaking down. I mean, he was leading the fight comfortably on all the cards, and ended up losing. We do have some fights coming up. Let's talk about this today, and then we'll get more details on Tuesday. Tim Tszyu fights this Wednesday from
this Wednesday.
Australia, which will technically be at about, well, I guess you can consider it about 3 in the morning Tuesday when you go to sleep, everybody, at 3 in the morning. If you want to set your alarm, wake up. I'm not sure where you could see the fight at. I don't think ESPN Plus picked it up like they picked up his last fight with Jeff Horn, but who knows
You
from
can
now
catch
to,
it on Sky Sports.
I
You
don't
can
think is it Sky maybe? I don't know.
Sky or BT, or is that what it is? BT Sports. That's what
BT
I saw.
Sport. You might be able to pick it up somewhere. I can't imagine it's not going to be out there on a stream or something somewhere, but
But it is
uh
come from Australia, from
yeah,
South
they're fighting
Wales.
in New South Wales, and Tim Tszyu coming off his big stoppage win over Jeff Horn, where a fight he just dominated. I don't think
Absolutely.
anybody's putting a beating on Jeff Horn like that. And I'll go so far as to say even Terrence Crawford. Terrence Crawford didn't beat Jeff Horn as bad as Tim Tszyu did. And
Oh
Tim
no,
and Tim
yeah.
Tszyu was fighting him at a more comfortable weight, 154, where Jeff probably was more comfortable, not at 147 in Vegas, where they were in the middle of summer, where I mean, where Jeff Horn, he didn't want to complain too much, but apparently a lot of things were put in motion against him and his team that entire fight week. They were made to keep, just very uncomfortable the entire week for that fight with Bud Crawford. But either way,
Oh yeah,
Tim,
I mean, he's not the first one to say that and stuff like this, but I mean, the whole card itself for like Tim Tszyu. I know I want to cover it. I know me and you, we're gonna probably cover it unless something else comes. So we'll have information out there and stuff. We'll do the round by round. Obviously, we can't show any video and stuff for certain reasons and stuff like this, but we'll try to do what we can do. But there's a couple fighters that are fighting on the card too. Paul Fleming's fighting on it, but there's a guy that's fighting on the undercard too. Liam Wilson, that 7-0 guy that's coming up and stuff like this. So there's some good prospects. It's a good card. If you can
yeah,
get
it's
up
a
at
good,
3 o'clock in the morning,
yeah, and on the East Coast, it'll probably be like 6 a.m. So most people are probably up, and if you're confined to the home because of quarantine, hey, find a stream, whatever, find where it's going to be shown and watch the fight, because what you really need to see is you really need to see this kid.
yes,
This kid gets a lot of, I mean, like I said, he's got a lot to live up to because of who his father was, but I firmly will
he's different
basically,
though.
I'll fully endorse what Paulie Malignaggi said about him a few months back on Twitter when he said this is going to be the best Australian-born fighter ever. I'm talking over all. I'm talking over Jeff Fennick,
Fennec, all of them, yeah.
over Anthony Mundine, over Jeff Horn, all of them. Tszyu, as we know, is a transplant. Tszyu was born in Sarab, Russia, so he's not technically born and bred Australian. But Tim Tszyu, this kid is getting better with each and every fight, and this is a fight he did not have to take. He could have just rode the coattails, rode the wave of his fight over Jeff Horn early into 2021, but the kid probably got right back in the gym the next week. And I mean, he took very little punishment at all in that Jeff Horn fight. He probably got right back in the gym and just been training like a madman ever since. This kid is going to be a good one.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things I really, I know somebody who should be up at 3 o'clock in the morning watching this fight, Charlos. Some of you 154 pounders that are going to overlook this kid, because I'm going to tell you something right now. Right now is your opportunity to start learning about him, because I tell you right now, there's nothing stopping the Tim Tszyu train. He's going to come through this part of the country eventually, and whatever champion's going to stand in front of him, believe me, this kid, if he's developed anything, any attribute from his father, which he does, he's got several ones, but they're modified. It's that determination that Kostya Tszyu brought. Kostya Tszyu never walked away from a challenge. I mean, he was put in compromising situations all the time, and he always knew how to rise to the occasion, a la Zab Judah. We're talking about a fighter that face was printed all over Sports Illustrated and everything. They were already naming this guy, giving him the win, but they forgot one thing. Nobody convinced Kostya Tszyu, and Kostya Tszyu made short work of him.
Hey, did I ever tell you about the time right before that fight? This was probably 6 months before the fight was ever even signed. I used to listen to the Jim Rome program a lot, pretty much every day from my office. This is back when I worked in a different industry and I had my little radio. I would listen to Jim Rome every morning. And and periodically he'd have guest hosts fill in. And on this particular day, it was Jim Lampley. So I called in, and believe it or not, I got in, and me and Jim Lampley talked on the phone. We talked over the airwaves, and we were talking about that potential fight in the future. And at that point, the fight wasn't even signed. And Jim Lampley was like, well, Zab Judah, blah, blah, blah. He's too good, blah, blah. I see him, and I said, hey, I respectfully disagree. I think when that fight does happen, I think Cassius knocks him out. And sure enough, sure as shit, I mean, and that was one of those knockouts that's like a YouTube, what is it called? They call it, it went viral on YouTube.
Well, the sad thing was we had a football game that night. We couldn't even watch it. Remember, we found out on thing because we had a football game. I believe I had a football game in Covina. I think I talked to you on the phone and you told me I think you watched it live, right?
No, I didn't even get to. Did I get to watch it live? I can't remember if I watched it live.
Oh, no. You were having a football game. We were in Corona.
Yeah, that might have been it. But either way, and this was several years back, so there wasn't things like social media like it is now. I don't even think I think YouTube didn't exist back then.
Argenis was around the same time too.
Maybe, but I
remember how excited we were when we found out that he had stopped, and we couldn't wait to go home and see it on retape like this, because we allowed ourselves to get kind of like hypnotized by all the bullshit talk and made Zab. Don't get me wrong, Zab Judah, you talking about a guy, if he was in his prime right now and in the 140-pound division,
he'd do some damage.
Oh, hell yes.
Well, you know what we said earlier about someone like Shakur Stevenson and a potential fight with Miguel Berchelt. A lot of people are saying, well, they're using the same descriptive words. They're saying Shakur's too skilled, he's too this, he's too flashy, he's too sharp. They said the same thing about Kostas Tszyu and Zab Judah. Even though Tszyu was the one that had the 300 and something, 345 and 5 amateur record, whatever he had. He had a phenomenal amateur record as well. He was the Pan Am game champion. He never went to the Olympics that year. He decided to emigrate from Russia to Australia to turn pro. Either way, a lot of the same sentiment was out there. Zab's too slick, too good, too this.
I can't remember a fight when Kostas Tszyu didn't run into that talk. Same thing happened when he was going to fight against Sharma Mitchell. They were always making him look like he couldn't beat the fast-talking, fast-handed, slick fighter. And he did it every time. He showed every time. It only takes what my mom and my daddy gave me at birth, and that was this.
Exactly. And what I'm saying is that Shakur Stevenson, they're saying that about Berchelt. I'm reading all over the place. Well, Berchelt's too slow. He's too hittable. They said the same thing. You watch what happens if that fight ever does come to fruition. If it ever does,
I want to see what happens when Shakur actually takes a punch from a puncher. We really look at his resume. He's yet to really get in there with a puncher of Berchelt's magnitude. And the fighters that he's talking about right now, I mean, he's put out there a pretty dangerous hit list and stuff. So he better,
But it's just talk, though. He's talking about Devin Haney. He's talking about Teofimo. He's talking about Ryan Garcia. He's talking about all these guys. But it's, it's
well, really... you made a good point. And I hope a lot of people do. And it was actually funny because I had a couple of people that chimed in, and they said that you said something that really, really opened their eyes. And that was when you see fighters like Terrence Crawford and these others that make it look like fighters are avoiding them, that they can't make the fights happen because they're afraid. When you said, listen, at this level, when you've been doing it this long, nobody's afraid. They said, you know what? That made perfect sense. They never thought of it that way because they always fed into the media bullshit. You know what I'm saying? So that was a brilliant thing by you, bro.
Yeah, fear. Yeah, these guys are professional fighters. You know what I mean? There's always probably a little sense of apprehension and nervousness. If you want to call it fear, okay, but these guys, I remember watching sparring where Johnny Molina is getting ready for his fight against Figueroa, and he's sparring. There's lightweights.
That one still hurts, dude.
There's lightweights in there that are jumping the ring with them, and obviously they're giving up a good 3 divisions, but they're like, hey, I'm gonna get in there and do my job. At no point did they say I'm afraid. One of our guys, Rene Moreno, a couple months back. Renee's 3-0 as a professional, right? He sparred everybody. He sparred Devin Haney. He sparred Rolly. He sparred them all.
Tried to spar against Teofimo, but couldn't
tried to spar against Teofimo about a year ago, and they didn't want anything to do with them. But he got in there and sparred recently with Carlos Castro. 26-0, 27-0. Carlos Castro was on the verge of a title shot at 100.
Well, wasn't he sparring with Leo Santa Cruz, preparing him for Tank Davis too?
Yeah, he prepared.
So
he was his primary sparring partner for this entire thing. But what I'm saying is, here's a guy that's 3-0, right? He had 41 or 42 amateur fights, and he's getting ready to get in there and spar against a guy that's 27-0, world ranked number 1, ready for a title fight. At no point is there fear involved, man. This is fighting. If you're afraid, you don't need. Go play darts.
You're in the wrong sport.
Go play.
Oh, you're absolutely right.
Go play cornhole, whatever that game is.
Well, I think that's one of the misconceptions that people don't understand, bro, because they've never been a part of a gym. See, like when you see people and they knock, say like Jamie-Munguia. on some of his performances.
I see a lot of people. Jaime's a victim of a lot of hate these days.
Yeah. But the thing is let's be honest. Outside of America, and even in America, certain parts, the second most popular fighter in the world in Latin descent is Jamie-Munguia, right behind Canelo-Alverez.
Yeah.
He generates a lot of hype. But the thing is, a lot of people don't know the backstory. A lot of people don't see the people that Jaime used to prepare. Jaime wasn't the type of guy, because he's so big, where he would fight a guy equal. He was fighting, like you said, light heavyweight, you name it.
He was sparring guys.
You don't always bring what you worked on to the ring, because he's still maturing. But once Jaime catches up, once that current ring situation and that past work situation in the gym come together, welcome to the world, Jamie-Munguia.
Yeah, once the stars align. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, Mike, real quick before we get off on here, so I pulled up the rankings right now for the super featherweight. I'm just going to go off of the top 5 fighters. Obviously Shakur Stevenson ranked number 10. Tell me how you think Shakur would match up against some of these fighters.
Okay.
So number 5, we got obviously Leo Santa Cruz.
Yeah, Leo doesn't belong anywhere near the 130-pound division.
Okay, so that's good. Number 4, Oscar Valdez.
Oscar Valdez he's a blood and guts warrior. He's one of those guys that he's so tough. You're like, man, eventually it's going to catch up to him. I would venture to say that if he fought Shakur right now, he would give Shakur all he can handle. And I think physically, Shakur has the height and reach advantage over him. Yeah. He's naturally a bigger guy than Valdez, because Valdez did come up, right?
Yes, he
did come up from 126. So that's what I see. That's what I see there. I think, to me, that's a pick 'em fight right now. Maybe even not right now. I think Shakur needs a few more fights, but that could be a pick 'em fight.
Number 3, Tevin Farmer.
Tevin Farmer's slick, but I think Tevin Farmer would do just enough to lose. He'll make it competitive, but I don't know. There's something about Tevin in that last fight with Jojo Diaz. It's like he couldn't pull the trigger. He said he had an off night, so maybe the old Tevin Farmer. If we see the Tevin Farmer prior to that second fight with Jojo Diaz, that's another very, very close fight.
That brings up a great point, and a name that was actually brought up by Shakur Stevens, Jojo Diaz.
Oh, he did mention Jojo Diaz?
Yes, he did.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what. I tell you what, Jojo Diaz is going to hit him. Jojo don't fuck around. Jojo's going to hit you.
Yeah.
And Jojo does have a little bit of a mean streak in him, man. He's a
lately
great
it's gotten like that. Yeah. And
well, he's frustrated with what's going on with the pandemic in his career. He's a guy that should really, he's got everything that you would want to be a superstar. He's a likable kid.
Farmer, a guy who he wasn't supposed to beat, and then the pandemic hits. Right when he should be springboarded and all this stuff. So this is going to put me up to the last one. And number 1, probably the most dangerous guy next to Jojo Diaz in the division, Miguel Berchelt, who we've been talking about tonight.
Yeah, I think Berchelt steamrolls him. I think Stevenson has some success in early rounds. Once Miguel figures him out and catches him, it's over. I think he knocks him out. I think and when I say he knocks him out, I think it's brutal.
Well, yeah, you just got to look at the resume of Berchelt. And like I said, Berchelt's always been one of those guys that overlooked. I didn't overlook him. I don't know how many times we've talked about it. When people talked about, Chocolito and all these other people and stuff like this that are doing things, I was like, dude, there's a monster at 130 at 130 pounds in Miguel Berchelt that everybody's kind of overseeing. And it was even going into the Jason Sosa fight. Everybody was talking about how Sosa was, maybe he was going to be able to bring that experience that he exhibited against Lomachenko. It wasn't even close. Every punch was just thudding. Fernando Vargas. Everybody was, based off of that first fight, everybody was like, oh my God, this guy. Look what Berchelt did the next time. It's just
yeah, Berchelt's number 1 in the division for a reason.
Yeah.
And I know that Shakur's, selling those wolf tickets now and calling them out now, because it's easy to call somebody. It's easy to stick your tongue out and go la 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 to the lion behind the glass enclosure.
Exactly, bro.
You know what I'm saying? Knowing that lion ain't going to get to you, or that polar bear or whatever it is, knowing that they can't get to you. But when that enclosure is no longer there and it's reality, then I think he'll choose his words a little bit more selectively. But
so real quick before we go to on our pound for pound list that we had, I know you pretty much remember it. Do you see any changes after this week?
Well, I think we were going to reassess it. Maybe we can do that on Tuesday before we talk about this week's coming fights, because I know we both showed some interest in propelling Errol-Spence up a couple notches, at least a notch or two. So we'll have to revisit it and then do that. And on Tuesday, obviously, we're going to talk about the fights coming up this weekend. We've got fights on Friday and on Saturday. Friday from Hard Rock from Florida, was it the Hard Rock they're fighting at in Florida? Triple G's fighting his mandatory, and then against the Polish fighter, and then of course on Saturday, Canelo-Alverez, Callum Smith.
Before we leave, bro, I didn't really. I know we're going to talk about it more on Tuesdays like this, but what's your take on this upcoming Triple G fight? I know there's been a very little talk. I mean, the promotion on it has just been absolutely. The last few fights for Triple G been the promotion aspect has just been absolutely terrible.
Well, I'm going to tell you why. Because DAZN is the platform. DAZN has major issues right now with promoting these fights properly. They just don't promote these fights properly. I don't know if it's monetary restraints or what, but they are not doing a good job promoting these fights.
I think a lot of it has to do with because obviously the Callum Smith Canelo fight is on the same platform and it's getting a lot of talk, but I think that's because of the two fighters.
But even that though, I'm not seeing commercials about Canelo or not. I mean, if you got DAZN, you're probably getting email notifications about the fight coming up and whatever, if you have the app on your phone, but I'm not seeing a whole lot about it. There's not a whole lot of talk about it. Probably because the fight was thrown together in about a 5-week span. If I'm right, it was signed just 4.5 weeks ago. So I mean, it's one of those things where Canelo, hey, I got to get one more fight in the year 20. Would this be
props to Canelo for taking on a guy who's one of the guy who most experts consider the best in the division, which I don't consider. To me, it's David Benavidez even above Canelo. But maybe we could jump into that more next week or maybe even the following week and look a little bit more in the direction of where Triple G's going. And even with the victory, which he should get in this fight, what's his future prospects and where does he go at this point?
Yeah,
it doesn't look like there's a whole lot of things.
The thing about it, then, man, is these other fighters at 160 are growing, and Triple G's growing old.
Yeah,
he's on the cusp of what, 40. What is he now? 38, 39 years old now.
He's 40 this year.
He'll be 40 this year. So you get to a point in boxing where you kind of you hit the peak, and then you just. And I'm not saying he still can't do great things, even at 40. I mean, look at Mayweather was still fighting competitive fights at 40. And Manny Pacquiao's 41, right? 41, and he's still competitive as hell. He's a world champion right now. But we'll have to see. This guy that he's fighting on Friday, I know the kid's undefeated. He's only got 5 knockouts in his 21 wins, so it isn't like this guy's a power puncher. But we'll see. We'll see if Triple G is still the old Triple G and can get this guy out of there in devastating fashion. But if he struggles with this guy, then hey, the writing might be on the wall that hey, But then again, there's not a lot of people don't know too much about this guy. I think his name is Samarzin or something like that. A lot of people don't know a lot about him.
Don't know about him, and those are the ones sometimes that are dangerous. I think Triple G kind of ran in that situation with Derevyanchenko. I think that even though Derevyanchenko had that close fight with Daniel Jacobs, I don't think that Triple G and his people really, really looked at Derevyanchenko and saw what he was able to do. And I think that's why Derevyanchenko was able to be successful in certain aspects of Triple G. I absolutely agree with you. When you're fighting against a guy, I wouldn't even look at the 5 knockouts. That could mean nothing. He could have fought against the other guys. Could have all been granite chin, for who The guy could end up having popping. You don't even know. Don't ever take the 5. I saw Paulie Malignaggi knock a champion out, and it just depends.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. Right now, I look at it this way: based on Triple G's performance against Steve Rolls and against Derevyanchenko, he's got a couple little wounds on him. If he doesn't look impressive in this fight against,
he looked impressive against Steve Rolls. He knocked Steve Rolls out pretty.
But again, what I mean by that is that it's hard to really gauge it when the guy Steve Rolls isn't really somebody when you got people going, who the fuck is Steve Rolls? And then
Vanes Martirosyan prior to that, and before the second Canelo fight, Martirosyan was, pretty much.
And we know who was supposed to be in the ring with rather than Martirosyan, but that's the direction that they decided to take.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if Triple G doesn't come out of this with Star Spangled Banner and fireworks shooting out of his ass, he's going to have a serious wound on him. And you know what? A bleeding, wounded animal is a vulnerable animal. And I tell you now, there's a lot of hungry tigers right now in the 160-pound division.
Yeah, very well said. So let's go ahead and close it out, man. We're running a little bit over. So for us here at Enter the Ring Live, that was the show for Sunday. We'll be back Tuesday at 5 o'clock on the West Coast, 8 o'clock on the East Coast to preview the upcoming fights for the weekend and anything that develops from, this week until now. Don't forget. Well, and we'll preview obviously again the Tim Tszyu fight because that's happening later on that night. So
yeah, sounds great, bro.
Thanks everybody for tuning in, man. Like and subscribe. Hit the bell notification. Help us out. Help us get some more interested people on here to show us a little bit of support.
Absolutely. And hey, have a wonderful night, my brother, man. I love you, bro, man. And I'll talk to you. And everybody, don't forget, Tuesday, and we'll talk more about Tim Tszyu. And
we'll see you guys on Tuesday night, Tuesday 5 o'clock.
This was Enter the Ring Live with AJ Rage and Mighty.